The rain hammered against the taxi window as I clutched my suitcase with trembling hands. Everything I owned in the world was crammed into 2 bags, one small suitcase and a worn leather purse that had been my mother's. Inside that purse was the only thing keeping me from complete panic. A faded black credit card with my father's name embossed on it in gold letters. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and 12 hours ago I had a home, a marriage, and a life I thought was solid. Now I had nothing. "Where to, miss?" the taxi driver asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror with concern. I realized I'd been sitting in his cab for 5 minutes without giving him an address. Where could I go? My husband Marcus had made it crystal clear. I was no longer welcome in our house. His words still echoed in my mind. "You've been nothing but a burden, Sarah. I want you out today." "The Riverside Motel on 5th Street, I finally said, naming the cheapest place I could think of. The driver nodded and pulled away from the curb. I watched his house disappear behind the rain-soaked streets. The Victorian-style home with the blue shutters I'd painted myself. The garden where I'd spent countless hours planting roses. The porch where we'd sipped coffee on Sunday mornings during the first year of our marriage, back when Marcus still smiled at me. That felt like a lifetime ago. I was 32 years old, and I'd spent the last 8 years building a life with a man who had just thrown me away like garbage. No warning, no discussion, just a cold command to leave. My hand shook as I pulled out my phone. 0 missed calls, 0 messages. Not from Marcus, not from his family, not from the few friends I'd kept in touch with. I'd been erased from my own life in a single afternoon. The taxi pulled up to the motel, and reality hit me like a physical blow. The Riverside Motel was a rundown building with peeling paint and a flickering neon sign. This was my life now. "That'll be $18, the driver said. I reached for my wallet and froze. My credit cards, all of them, had been in Marcus's name with me as an authorized user. He'd canceled them. I'd discovered that when I tried to buy a bottle of water at the gas station near our house. The card had been declined, and the cashier had cut it up right in front of me, saying it had been reported as stolen. The humiliation had been crushing. I need to find an ATM, I stammered. The driver's expression softened. "Look, miss, you look like you're having a rough day. Just pay me when you can." He helped me with my suitcase and drove away before I could protest. That small act of kindness broke something inside me. I stood in the rain, tears mixing with the drops sliding down my face, and sobbed. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to be strong or perfect or whatever Marcus needed me to be. I was just broken. Finally, I dragged myself and my suitcase into the motel lobby. A bored-looking clerk glanced up from his phone. "Room for the night?" "Yes," I whispered. "How much?" $59. Cash or card?" I pulled out my father's old card with shaking hands. I hadn't used it in 15 years. Not since he'd given it to me when I left for college. "For emergencies only," he'd said, pressing it into my palm. "Promise me you'll keep this safe." I'd kept my promise. The card had traveled with me through college, through my early 20s, through my wedding day. It had sat in my wallet, forgotten but never discarded. My father had died 10 years ago, long before he could see how my life would turn out. The card was probably expired, probably worthless, but it was all I had. "I'll try this," I said, sliding it across the counter. The clerk ran it through the machine. I held my breath, expecting rejection, expecting one more humiliation to cap off this nightmare day. The machine beeped. "Approved," the clerk said, handing me a receipt and a key. "Room 23, second floor. Ice machine's broken, but the vending machine works. I stared at the receipt in shock. The card had worked. Somehow, impossibly, my father's 15-year-old credit card had worked. Is something wrong with the machine? I asked. The clerk shrugged. Ran through fine. Have a good night. I took my key and climbed the stairs in a daze. Room 23 was small and smelled like cigarettes and cheap air freshener, but it had a bed and a lock on the door. It was safe. That was all that mattered. I collapsed onto the bed and finally let myself fall apart completely. I must have fallen asleep because I woke to the sound of my phone ringing. The room was dark, and for a confused moment, I didn't know where I was. Then everything came rushing back. The fight, the eviction, the motel. My phone screen showed an unknown number with a New York City area code. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello, is this Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell? A woman's voice asked. She sounded professional, crisp, like she was reading from a script. Yes, I said warily. Ms. Mitchell, this is Catherine Brennan from First National Bank's Private Wealth Division. I'm calling regarding account activity on the card ending in 4738. Can you confirm you're in possession of this card? My stomach dropped. Of course. The card had been too good to be true. It was probably flagged as fraudulent. Or maybe it had been my father's business card, and I'd just committed some kind of crime by using it. Yes, I admitted. Look, I can explain. Ma'am, please hold for Mr. Ashworth. Before I could respond, I was on hold, listening to classical music. My mind twisted. Who was Mr. Ashworth? Was I about to be arrested? Could you even be arrested for using your dead father's credit card? The hold music clicked off. Ms. Mitchell, a man's voice this time, deeper and warmer. This is Robert Ashworth, Senior Vice President of Private Client Services at First National. I apologize for disturbing you at this hour, but we've been trying to locate you for quite some time. Locate me? I echoed. I don't understand. The card you used today, account ending in 4738, has been dormant for 15 years. When it showed activity after so long, it triggered several automatic alerts in our system. Ms. Mitchell, do you know what kind of account this card is attached to? No, I admitted. My father gave it to me for emergencies when I was 17. I always thought it was just a regular credit card. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Ms. Mitchell, your father was Thomas James Mitchell, correct? Of Mitchell and Associates? Yes. My father had been a financial consultant. I didn't know much about his work. He died suddenly of a heart attack when I was 22, and I'd been too consumed with grief and college to ask many questions about his business affairs. Ms. Mitchell, the card you're holding isn't a credit card. It's a Platinum Access card linked to a private investment account, an account that has been growing, untouched, for the last 15 years. My heart started pounding. I don't understand what you're saying. Ms. Mitchell, I think this conversation would be better held in person. Can you come to our downtown branch tomorrow morning? Say, 10 a.m. I'll clear my schedule. Yes, I suppose so. But please, can you just tell me what's going on? Another pause. When Mr. Ashworth spoke again, his voice was gentle, almost careful. The account has a current balance of approximately $43 million. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered onto the cheap motel floor. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I couldn't. My mind spun in endless circles, convinced I'd misheard, convinced it was a scam, convinced I was losing my mind. $43 million. It was impossible. My father had been comfortable, but not wealthy. We'd lived in a nice middle-class neighborhood. I'd gone to public schools. There had never been any indication of that kind of money. At 9 a.m., I stood outside First National Bank's downtown headquarters, a gleaming glass tower that made me feel even smaller than I already did. I was still wearing the same clothes from yesterday, jeans and a sweater, both rumpled from sleeping in them. I looked like I'd spent the night in a motel room, which I had. Inside, the lobby was all marble and polished brass. A receptionist directed me to the 20th floor, where Catherine Brennan, the woman from the phone call, was waiting. Ms. Mitchell. She was in her 40s, wearing an impeccable navy suit. She extended her hand. "Thank you for coming. Mr. Ashworth is ready for you." I followed her down a corridor lined with oil paintings and into a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A man in his 60s stood up from behind a massive desk. He had kind eyes and silver hair. "Ms. Mitchell, Robert Ashworth, please, sit down." I sat, feeling like I was in a dream. Mr. Ashworth sat across from me and folded his hands on the desk. "I imagine you had a difficult night." "You could say that," I managed. "Is this real? The money, is it really there?" "It's very real." He slid a folder across the desk. "This is a full account statement. Your father established this account 30 years ago, shortly after you were born. He made regular contributions to it until his death, and left explicit instructions that it was to remain untouched until either you accessed it or your 35th birthday, whichever came first." I opened the folder with shaking hands. Pages of numbers swam before my eyes. Investment portfolios, stock holdings, real estate trusts, and, at the bottom of the first page, in bold, current balance, $43,127,438.22. "I don't understand," I whispered. "My father wasn't rich. We lived in a normal house. I worked my way through college with student loans." "Your father was very private about his wealth," Mr. Ashworth said gently. "According to the notes in the file, he wanted you to have a normal childhood. He believed that knowing about this money too early would change you. Perhaps not for the better. He wanted you to learn the value of work, of struggle, of making your own way." Tears blurred my vision. "He left me all this?" "Yes, and there's more." Mr. Ashworth pulled out another document. "He also left you a letter. We were instructed to give it to you when you accessed the account." He handed me an envelope, my father's handwriting on the front. "For Sarah, when she's ready." My hands trembled so badly I could barely open it. Inside was a single page, dated 2 weeks before my father died. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've finally discovered what I've been keeping safe for you all these years. I hope you're not angry with me for the secrets. I hope you understand that everything I did was out of love. This money represents 30 years of careful investment and planning. It's meant to give you freedom. Freedom to make choices based on what you want, not what you need. Freedom to walk away from situations that don't serve you. Freedom to build a life that makes you happy. I know I taught you to be independent, to work hard, to never rely on anyone else. Those lessons were real and important, but I also want you to know that asking for help isn't weakness, and accepting support isn't failure. This money is my way of supporting you, even after I'm gone. Use it wisely. Use it joyfully. And Sarah, please, please use it to choose yourself. Choose your own happiness. Don't let anyone make you smaller than you are. I love you forever, Dad." I was sobbing by the time I finished reading. Mr. Ashworth quietly pushed a box of tissues across the desk. "Your father was a remarkable man," he said softly. "I had the privilege of meeting him several times over the years. He talked about you constantly. He was so proud of you." I wiped my eyes, trying to process everything. What happens now? Now, we transfer the full management of the account to you. You'll meet with our wealth management team to discuss your options. This money can work for you. Continue to grow, provide income, fund whatever dreams you have. Or you can simply have security, knowing it's there. Security. The word felt foreign. 24 hours ago, I'd had nothing. Now I had everything. Mr. Ashworth, I said slowly, can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't anyone tell me about this sooner? After my father died? He looked uncomfortable. Your father's instructions were very specific. The account was sealed until you accessed the card or turned 35. He believed you needed time to become who you were going to be without this money influencing your choices. We legally couldn't contact you. But I was authorized to use the card this whole time? Yes. He gave it to you when you were 17. Correct. It was always yours to use. He was hoping, according to his notes, that you'd only use it if you truly needed it, if life pushed you to the point where you had no other options. I thought about yesterday, about Marcus throwing me out, about standing in the rain with nowhere to go, about being so desperate that I'd tried a 15-year-old card as a last resort. My father had known. Somehow, he'd known that one day I might need an escape route. 3 days later, I stood outside my former home, Marcus's home, with a lawyer named Patricia Holden at my side. Patricia was 50, sharp as a knife, and had spent the last 2 days getting up to speed on my situation. Remember, she said quietly, stay calm. Don't engage emotionally. We're here to collect your belongings, nothing more. I nodded, my heart pounding. I'd spent the last 3 days in a blur of bank meetings and legal consultations. I'd learned that I didn't just have money, I had power. Power to protect myself. Power to fight back. Patricia knocked on the door. Marcus answered, and the sight of him made my stomach clench. He was handsome in that polished way that had first attracted me. Perfect hair, perfect smile, perfect life. Or so I'd thought. His smile faltered when he saw Patricia. Sarah, what's going on? Who's this? This is my attorney, Patricia Holden, I said, keeping my voice steady. I'm here to collect my personal belongings. Attorney. Marcus laughed, but it sounded nervous. Sarah, don't be ridiculous. Look, I know I was harsh the other day, but, Mr. Mitchell, Patricia interrupted smoothly, my client has a legal right to retrieve her personal property. We can do this cooperatively, or we can return with a police escort. Your choice. Marcus's face darkened. Fine, whatever. Just make it quick. He stepped aside, letting us in. The house looked exactly the same. My paintings still on the walls, my books still on the shelves, the throw pillows I'd picked out still arranged on the couch. It looked like a home, but it had never really been. Mine. I'd just been allowed to live here. I started gathering things, photo albums, my grandmother's jewelry box, my laptop, my clothes. Marcus followed me from room to room, growing increasingly agitated. This is insane, Sarah. So I had a bad day and said some things I didn't mean. You're really going to throw away 8 years of marriage over one fight? I turned to face him. One fight? Marcus, you canceled my credit cards without warning. You cut off my phone. You threw me out with no notice and nowhere to go. You treated me like I was nothing. You were being dramatic, he snapped. You were always so sensitive, always making everything about you. Mr. Mitchell, Patricia warned, I'd suggest you stop talking. Who the hell do you think you are? Marcus rounded on her. This is my house, my marriage. Actually, Patricia said calmly, we need to discuss that. Sarah, did you contribute to the down payment on this house? Yes, I said. $30,000 from my savings. Patricia smiled. And you've been making monthly contributions to the mortgage? Yes, through my checking account, which Marcus had access to. Marcus's face went pale. What are you getting at? I'm getting at the fact that Sarah has a legal claim to a portion of this property's equity. She's also entitled to spousal support, given that she left her job at your request 3 years ago to manage the household full-time. That's bullshit, Marcus exploded. Sarah, tell her this is bullshit. You wanted to quit your job. You said you were tired of working. You asked me to quit, I said quietly. You said it would be better if I focused on the house, on supporting your career. You said we didn't need my income. Because we didn't. My salary is more than enough. Enough to support yourself, Patricia corrected. But Sarah had no income of her own. You created a situation of financial dependence, then exploited it by cutting off her access to funds and evicting her without notice. That's financial abuse, Mr. Mitchell. The words hung in the air. Financial abuse. I'd never thought about it that way, but hearing Patricia say it made something click into place. All those years of Marcus controlling the money, making me ask permission for purchases, telling me I was bad with finances, so he'd handle everything. It hadn't been protection. It had been control. Marcus's expression changed. He looked panicked now. Sarah, please, let's talk about this privately. Send your lawyer away, and we can work this out. I'll apologize. We can go to counseling, whatever you want. Whatever I want. The phrase was almost funny. Marcus had never cared what I wanted. I think we're done here, I said, picking up the last box of my things. Sarah, Marcus grabbed my arm. Please, don't do this. I love you. I need you. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face. Once upon a time, I would have crumbled at those words. I would have convinced myself that I was being too harsh, too unforgiving. I would have stayed. Let go of my arm, I said quietly. He did, looking shocked. Goodbye, Marcus. Patricia and I walked out. As we loaded my boxes into her car, I heard Marcus shouting from the doorway, his words growing more desperate and then angry. I didn't look back. A week later, I was sitting in a cafe downtown with a different lawyer, Daniel Chen, who specialized in family law. Patricia had recommended him after our first consultation, revealed the depth of my situation. I've reviewed all the financial documents you provided, Daniel said, spreading papers across the table. Sarah, did you know that Marcus opened 3 credit cards in your name? I froze, my coffee cup halfway to my lips. What? 3 cards. Total balance of about $68,000. He's been making minimum payments, but your credit score has taken a serious hit. The cafe seemed to tilt around me. How is that possible? I never applied for any cards. He forged your signature on the applications. It's fraud, technically, but since you're married, proving it would be complicated. Daniel's expression was grim. There's more. The house you've been living in, it has a second mortgage you probably didn't know about. Marcus took out a $200,000 line of credit against the equity. What did he spend it on? I whispered. Daniel hesitated. Based on the bank records I was able to access, gambling, online poker, sports betting, casino visits. Sarah, your husband has a serious gambling problem. He's in debt up to his eyeballs. The room spun. Suddenly, so many things made sense. The mysterious business trips, the phone calls he'd taken in another room, his mood swings. Elated one week, irritable and withdrawn the next. The way he'd gotten increasingly controlling about money in the last few years. That's why he kicked me out, I said slowly. Not because of anything I did, because he couldn't afford to keep me anymore. Likely, yes. And Sarah, Daniel pulled out another document. I did some more digging. Marcus's salary? It's not what he told you. He's been laid off for 3 months. He's been pretending to go to work while actually spending his days at the casino. I couldn't breathe. My entire marriage had been a lie. Not just a marriage in trouble, not just a relationship gone sour, a fundamental deception. Marcus had been lying about everything while systematically destroying our finances and my credit. He was using me, I said numbly. My credit, my savings, my down payment on the house. He was bleeding me dry. Yes, Daniel said gently. And when there was nothing left to take, he discarded you. Sarah, I need to ask, does Marcus know about your father's account? No, I'd been very careful about that. He knew my father died when I was young, but I never mentioned the card or any money. I didn't even know about it until last week. Good. Keep it that way. If Marcus finds out you have assets, he'll come after you for spousal support. He'll try to claim he's entitled to half. We need to move fast. File for divorce, document all of his financial abuse and fraud, and protect your assets before he realizes what's happening. Over the next 2 weeks, I learned more about the man I'd been married to than I'd learned in 8 years of living with him. Daniel hired a forensic accountant who uncovered a trail of debt and deception so extensive it made my head spin. Marcus had lost nearly $400,000 gambling over the past 5 years. He'd maxed out every credit card we had, or rather, I had, since they were all in my name. He'd borrowed money from his parents, telling them I had cancer and needed expensive treatments. He'd taken out payday loans. He'd even stolen money from his own company before getting fired. How did I not see this? I asked Daniel during one particularly brutal meeting. Because he didn't want you to, Daniel said. Addicts are excellent liars, Sarah, and financial abusers are experts at isolation and control. He kept you dependent, kept you questioning your own judgment, kept you focused on being the perfect wife so you wouldn't notice what he was doing. The divorce papers were filed on a Monday morning. Marcus received them Tuesday afternoon. My phone started ringing immediately. I didn't answer. He left voicemail after voicemail, first apologetic, then angry, then threatening, then pleading. I listened to them with Patricia and Daniel, documenting everything. Then Marcus tried a different approach. Sarah, darling, it's Diane. Please call me back. We need to talk about what you're doing to Marcus. Diane Mitchell, Marcus's mother, had left me 6 voicemails in 2 days. I'd been ignoring them, but she'd now resorted to showing up at my new apartment. I'd rented a beautiful 2-bedroom in a secure building downtown, paid 6 months in advance. It was the first place that had ever felt truly mine. And now Marcus's mother was in the lobby, demanding to see me. You don't have to see her, Daniel said over the phone. You have every right to refuse. No, I said slowly. I want to. I want to hear what she has to say. I went downstairs. Diane was sitting in the lobby, perfectly dressed as always, her blonde hair in a neat bob. She looked up when she saw me, and her expression was cold. Sarah, finally. Diane, can we talk? Somewhere private? I led her to a small conference room the building maintained for residents. We sat across from each other at a table, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. You're destroying my son's life, Diane said finally. Your son destroyed his own life, I replied evenly. Did you know he's been gambling away every penny we had? That he opened credit cards in my name and maxed them out? That he's hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt? Diane's lips thinned. Marcus has had a few setbacks, but that's no reason to abandon him when he needs you most. Marriage is about standing by each other through difficult times. He threw me out, Diane, with no warning, no money, nowhere to go. He was under stress. He made a mistake in the heat of the moment. But instead of working it out like an adult, you ran to lawyers and filed for divorce. You're humiliating him. You're humiliating this entire family. I stared at her. Did you hear what I said? He committed fraud. He stole from me. He lied about everything. You're exaggerating, Diane said dismissively. Marcus said you'd twist things to make yourself look like a victim. You always were dramatic, Sarah. Something snapped inside me. Get out, I said quietly. Excuse me? Get out. I'm done with this family. I'm done with people who make excuses for Marcus's behavior. I'm done being told I'm dramatic or sensitive or too emotional for having basic standards. Get out of my building and don't contact me again. Diane stood up, her face flushing red. You're going to regret this. When you're alone and realize what you've thrown away. I've thrown away nothing, I interrupted. I've freed myself from a man who was using me in a family who enabled him. That's not loss. That's liberation. Diane stormed out. I sat in the conference room, my hands shaking, but my heart steady. I'd stood up for myself. For the first time in years, maybe the first time ever, I'd chosen my own dignity over keeping the peace. It felt terrifying and wonderful all at once. The divorce hearing was set for 6 weeks after I'd filed. In that time, Marcus tried everything to stop it or turn it in his favor. He sent flowers with tearful apology notes. I returned them. He showed up at my building. Security escorted him out. He tried to access our joint bank accounts and found them frozen by court order. He hired a lawyer, a cheap one, since he couldn't afford better, who sent threatening letters claiming I'd stolen from Marcus and destroyed his credit. Daniel responded with a comprehensive dossier of Marcus's fraud and financial abuse. The day of the hearing, I dressed in a simple navy suit. Patricia and Daniel flanked me as we walked into the courthouse. Marcus was there with his lawyer, and he looked terrible. Unshaven, disheveled, like he hadn't slept in days. He caught my eye across the hallway. For a moment, I saw a flash of the man I'd married, or thought I'd married. Then his expression hardened into anger. This didn't have to be like this, Sarah, he called out. You could have just talked to me. We could have worked it out. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. The hearing itself was brutal. Marcus's lawyer painted me as a cold, vindictive woman who'd abandoned her husband during a mental health crisis. My lawyers countered with bank records, credit card statements, testimony from the forensic accountant, and evidence of Marcus's lies. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Judge Carlson, listened to everything with an increasingly stern expression. Mr. Mitchell, she said finally, I've reviewed the evidence presented by both parties. Did you or did you not open 3 credit cards in your wife's name without her knowledge? Marcus squirmed. Your Honor, we were married. What's hers is mine. That's not how the law works. Judge Carlson interrupted. Did you or did you not forge your wife's signature on credit applications? I may have signed for her, but yes or no? Yes, Marcus admitted. But I was trying to protect our family. By gambling away your savings and destroying your wife's credit? Judge Carlson's voice was ice. Mr. Mitchell, I've seen many cases in this courtroom, but rarely have I seen such a clear pattern of financial abuse and fraud. Marcus's lawyer tried to intervene, but Judge Carlson held up a hand. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm granting your petition for divorce. Furthermore, I'm ruling that Mr. Mitchell has no claim to any assets or income you may have acquired separately. The debts he incurred in your name are his responsibility to repay. and I'm ordering him to attend both credit counseling and treatment for gambling addiction. Relief washed over me so strongly, I thought I might faint. Your Honor, Marcus's lawyer stood up. My client would like to request spousal support. He's currently unemployed. And denied, Judge Carlson said flatly. Mr. Mitchell is unemployed due to his own actions. He is not entitled to support from the woman he financially abused and fraudulently indebted. This hearing is concluded. She banged her gavel. Marcus exploded. This is bullshit. Sarah, you can't do this to me. I'm your husband. You owe me. 2 bailiffs moved toward him. Daniel quickly ushered me out of the courtroom as Marcus's shouts echoed behind us. In the hallway, I finally let myself breathe. It was over. I was free. Congratulations, Patricia said, smiling. You're officially divorced. I started crying, not from sadness, but from sheer, overwhelming relief. 8 years of my life were over. 8 years of walking on eggshells, of trying to be perfect, of slowly losing myself piece by piece. It was finished. What happens now? I asked when I could speak again. Now? Daniel grinned. Now you get to decide what you want your life to look like. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I received a call from Mr. Ashworth at the bank. Ms. Mitchell, I hope I'm not disturbing you. Do you have a moment to discuss something sensitive? Of course, I said, settling into my couch. I'd been doing that a lot lately. Settling, learning to be still, learning to exist without crisis. We've been conducting routine audits of older accounts, and something concerning has come to light regarding your father's estate. I think you should come in. The next morning, I sat in Mr. Ashworth's office once again. This time, he looked troubled. Sarah, he said, using my first name for the first time, in the process of our audit, we discovered some irregularities in the handling of your father's estate after his death. Do you remember who was the executor? My Uncle Richard, I said. My father's brother. Why? Did you ever receive your inheritance from your father's estate outside of this investment account? No, I said slowly. Uncle Richard told me there wasn't much left after debts and expenses. He gave me a few of my father's personal items and said that was basically it. Mr. Ashworth's expression darkened. Sarah, your father's estate was worth approximately $1.2 million at the time of his death. Even after taxes and legitimate expenses, you should have inherited at least $700,000. The room tilted. What? Your uncle, Richard Mitchell, was the executor. He submitted false accounting to the probate court, claiming the estate was insolvent. He embezzled nearly the entire inheritance. I couldn't speak. Uncle Richard, my father's brother, the man who'd comforted me at my father's funeral, who'd helped me sort through Dad's belongings, who I'd trusted completely. How did no one catch this? I finally managed to ask. You were young, only 22, and grieving. You had no reason to question his accounting. The probate court accepted his paperwork at face value. It's only now, because of our audit and cross-referencing with probate records, that the discrepancy became apparent. Where's the money now? That's what we're trying to determine. We've reported this to the authorities. The statute of limitations for this type of fraud is 10 years, which has passed, but there may be civil remedies available. I sat back in my chair, trying to process this. My uncle had stolen from me, had lied to me, had looked me in the eye at my father's funeral, and robbed me blind. There's something else, Mr. Ashworth said quietly. We found correspondence between your father and your uncle from shortly before your father's death. It seems your father suspected Richard was having financial troubles. He specifically structured this investment account, the one you've now accessed, to be sealed and separate from the estate, precisely because he didn't fully trust Richard. My father knew, I whispered. He suspected. He took steps to protect you. This account was held by a different bank, under different administrators. Richard never knew it existed. Your father made sure there was something your uncle couldn't touch. Tears streamed down my face. My father had known. He'd known his own brother might betray me, and he'd created a failsafe. I want to confront him, I said. Uncle Richard, I want to know why. Uncle Richard lived 2 hours away in a sprawling house in the suburbs. I'd only seen him a handful of times since my father's death. Christmas cards, the occasional phone call, nothing substantial. He'd always been warm and avuncular, asking how I was doing, saying he was proud of me. All lies. I called him from the car on my way there. Uncle Richard, it's Sarah. I need to talk to you about something important. Can I come by? Sarah, of course, sweetheart. Is everything okay? The endearment made me sick. I'll explain when I get there. When I arrived, Uncle Richard answered the door with a big smile. He was in his 60s, balding, with the same blue eyes as my father. Looking at him was like looking at a distorted mirror of my dad. Similar features, but wrong. Corrupt. Sarah, what a wonderful surprise. Come in, come in. I followed him into a living room full of expensive furniture, artwork on the walls, a massive television. All of it bought, I realized, with my inheritance. What did you want to talk about? Richard asked, settling into a leather armchair. My father's estate, I said. Specifically, the $700,000 you stole from me. The smile froze on his face. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. You were the executor. You submitted false accounting to the probate court. You told me there was nothing left when actually there was over $1 million. You stole my inheritance, Richard. He stood up, his face flushing. That's a serious accusation, Sarah. Do you have any proof? The bank has proof. They've already reported it to the authorities. Richard's expression crumbled. He sank back into his chair, suddenly looking much older. How did you find out? Does it matter? I didn't want to, he said quietly. I was in debt. I'd made some bad investments. I was going to lose everything. My house, my business, my marriage. When Tommy died and I saw how much was in the estate, I thought I could borrow it, just temporarily. Pay it back before you needed it. But you never paid it back. I tried, he said, and he sounded almost pleading. I really did, but the debt just kept growing. I kept thinking, next year, I'll tell her. And then, so much time had passed, and you never asked about the money, and I thought maybe it was better to just let it go. Let it go? I stood up, fury coursing through me. That was my money, Richard. My father's money. He worked his entire life to leave me something, and you stole it. You looked me in the eye at his funeral and stole from me. I know, Richard whispered. God, Sarah, I know. I've hated myself for it every day. But I couldn't face it. I couldn't face what I'd done. So you just, what? Kept living your life? Kept calling me at Christmas and pretending everything was fine. I thought about telling you so many times. But what could I say? Sorry I stole your inheritance. Here's 10% of it back, because that's all I can afford. You'd hate me. I do hate you, I said, and the words felt like a release. You betrayed me. You betrayed my father's trust. You're no better than Marcus. Richard flinched. Marcus? My ex-husband, who also lied to me, used me, and treated me like an ATM. Apparently, I attract men who see me as something to exploit. Sarah, please. No, I interrupted. I'm done. listening to men explain why they had to hurt me, why it was somehow necessary or justified. "I'm done." I turned to leave. "Wait," Richard called out. "For what it's worth, your father would be proud of who you've become. He'd be proud you're standing up for yourself." I looked back at him. "Don't you dare talk about my father. You don't get to invoke his memory after what you did." I walked out and didn't look back. The next 6 months passed in a strange blend of legal proceedings, therapy sessions, and quiet, personal reconstruction. I pressed charges against Richard, civil charges, since the criminal statute of limitations had passed. He settled out of court, agreeing to pay back $100,000, a fraction of what he'd stolen, but more than I'd expected to get. The process of confronting Marcus's and Richard's betrayals forced me to confront something deeper, my own patterns. Why had I attracted these men? Why had I stayed silent for so long? My therapist, Dr. Reeves, helped me see the threads connecting everything. "You were taught that being good meant not making waves," she explained. "That being lovable meant being easy, agreeable, undemanding. Your father loved you, but he also taught you to be independent, to the point of never asking for help. That made you vulnerable to people who would exploit that." It was hard to hear, but true. I'd spent so much of my life trying to be perfect. The perfect daughter, the perfect wife, the perfect woman, that I'd never learned to be myself. I'd never learned that my needs mattered, that I was allowed to take up space, that I was allowed to be difficult or demanding or too much. Slowly, carefully, I began to rebuild. Not the life I'd had, but something new. I went back to school, enrolling in a graduate program in art history, something I'd always wanted to do, but Marcus had discouraged. "Not practical," he'd said. "Who makes money in art history?" I volunteered at a women's shelter, helping other women escape financial abuse. Every time I shared my story, I saw recognition in someone's eyes. I saw them realize they weren't alone, weren't crazy, weren't the problem. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage. Turned out, Marcus had systematically isolated me, and once I started reaching out again, people were thrilled to hear from me. "We missed you," my college roommate told me over coffee. "You kind of disappeared." I'd disappeared. I'd made myself so small that I'd vanished. But I was coming back. 1 year after using my father's card in that motel, I sat in a conference room with Mr. Ashworth and a team of financial advisors. We were planning something ambitious. "The Mitchell Foundation for Financial Empowerment," I said, presenting the mission statement I'd drafted. We'd provide interest-free loans to women leaving abusive relationships, financial literacy education, legal support, and emergency housing assistance. Mr. Ashworth smiled. "Your father would love this." "I know," I said, feeling tears prick my eyes. "He left me this money to choose freedom. I want to give other women the same choice." We established the foundation with an initial funding of $10 million. The rest of my father's inheritance was invested to provide ongoing income, for me to live on comfortably, and for the foundation to continue operating in perpetuity. The first recipient was a woman named Jennifer. She was 35, with 2 kids, fleeing a husband who'd controlled every penny. She sat across from me in the foundation's office, a bright, welcoming space I'd personally designed, and cried when I explained that we'd cover her first 3 months of rent, help her establish credit in her own name, and connect her with a lawyer. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me." "Because someone did it for me," I said simply. "My father. He gave me a way out when I needed it most. I'm just passing it forward." Over the next year, the foundation helped 47 women. 47 women who got out of terrible situations, who rebuilt their lives, who chose themselves. Every thank you note, every update, every success story felt like healing another piece of my own heart. 18 months after my divorce, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Sarah Mitchell?" A woman's voice, nervous. "Yes, my name is Amanda. Amanda Williams. I think my husband is your ex-husband's gambling counselor. Or he was. Marcus stopped going to sessions." My stomach dropped. "Okay. I probably shouldn't be calling you. This is really inappropriate. But I found your number in Marcus's phone records. He's been calling you, hasn't he?" I hadn't answered any of Marcus's calls in over a year. But yes, he still tried occasionally. "Sometimes. He's spiraling," Amanda said, her words tumbling out. "My husband says he's in serious danger. He's talking about suicide. He's gotten involved with loan sharks. He's threatening people. My husband is ethically obligated to report this. But I don't know what I thought. That you should know? That maybe you could help?" "Amanda," I said gently, "I can't help Marcus. I'm not qualified, and I'm the last person who should be involved in his recovery. I know that. She paused. "He talks about you in sessions, about how you destroyed his life, about how if you just stood by him, everything would be fine. My husband says he's never taken responsibility for any of his actions, that he blames everything on you. That sounds like Marcus. I just wanted to warn you. If he's calling you, if he shows up, be careful. My husband says people in this state can be unpredictable." After I hung up, I called Daniel immediately. Within a week, I had a restraining order and upgraded security at my apartment building. I hated that it was necessary, but I'd learned my lesson about protecting myself. Marcus never showed up. I don't know if the restraining order stopped him or if he simply ran out of energy for his vendetta against me. Either way, the calls stopped. 6 months later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Marcus had filed for bankruptcy and moved back in with his mother. Part of me felt sad for him. Not because I wanted him back, but because I could see the trajectory of his life and knew he'd never hit bottom enough to actually change. But that wasn't my responsibility anymore. I'm sitting in my favorite coffee shop, working on my laptop. I'm 35 now. The age my father had specified in his trust documents. The age he thought I'd be ready. The foundation is thriving. We've helped over 200 women in 3 years. We've expanded to offer job training and childcare assistance. We've partnered with other organizations to create a network of support that reaches across 3 states. I finished my master's degree. I'm considering a PhD, but I'm not in a rush. I've learned that life doesn't have to be a race. I bought a house, a small Victorian with a garden, not unlike the one I'd lived in with Marcus. But this one is mine, only mine. I painted the shutters green. I planted roses. I sit on the porch on Sunday mornings and drink coffee alone, and it feels like freedom. I dated a little, but I'm not in a relationship. I might be someday, but I'm not lonely. I've learned the difference between being alone and being lonely. I've learned that I'm enough, all by myself. My phone buzzes. It's a message from Patricia, my lawyer turned friend. "Hey, you up for dinner tonight? Want to celebrate? Our pro bono case just won." I smile and type back, "Absolutely. My treat. I have money now. More money than I could spend in several lifetimes. But that's not what changed my life. What changed my life was realizing I'd always had value, even when I had nothing. What changed my life was learning to choose myself. What changed my life was understanding that freedom isn't just financial. It's emotional, psychological, spiritual. My father gave me a card for emergencies. He gave me a way out when I needed it most. But the real gift wasn't the money. The real gift was the lesson that I deserved to be saved, that I was worth saving, that asking for help, or in my case, using a 15-year-old credit card in a moment of desperation, wasn't weakness, but wisdom. I used my father's old card, and the bank panicked. I was shocked when I discovered I'd been wealthy all along, not just in money, but in strength, resilience, and worth. And I've spent every day since trying to help other women discover the same thing. Because everyone deserves an emergency card. Everyone deserves a way out. Everyone deserves to know they're worth saving, even if they have to save themselves.